Göran Bror Benny Andersson, born on 16th of December 1946 in the Vasastan district of Stockholm, was one of the greatest sonic architects of the 20th century. Although he was never a public face, he shaped the sound of a generation, becoming a member of the legendary pop group ABBA and co-authoring classic musicals such as Chess and Mamma Mia. Benny Andersson laid the invisible foundations for one of pop music's most enduring musical legacies. Yet, ironically, while ABBA reached the heights of their fame and illustrious career during the 1970s, the band quietly and abruptly disbanded in 1982. The end of ABBA was defined not by sensational headlines but by a deafening silence that lasted for more than 40 years. For decades, the public explanation has been vague, often revolving around the word pause. What makes the truth behind this breakup so bitter, far beyond the explanation of artistic conflict or financial dispute? Was it really just a break because there was no next album, no world tour, no final bow, a myth frozen in time? Or was there something deeper hidden in the musician's glamorous but also dark life, involving exhaustion, regret, heartbreak, and the painful silence that followed the applause? Finally, at 78, Benny Andersson has spoken, and his truth is deeper, sadder, and more revealing than anyone expected. Let's dig into the exact truth behind this fateful event, peeling back the layers of tragedy to better understand the talented artist who used music to survive his own pain. Benny Andersson was born on December 16, 1946. He grew up in a working-class family in Stockholm, where music was not a career path but a cherished tradition. His father was a civil engineer, and his grandfather, Ephraim, was a self-taught musician. His father and grandfather introduced Benny to the accordion when he was just 6 years old. It was that humble instrument that unlocked a passion for melody and harmony that would never leave him. Unlike many of his peers who aspired to fame, Benny was not driven by a desire to be seen. He was more interested in understanding how music works, from the mathematical structure of Bach to the raw storytelling of Swedish folk songs. He taught himself piano by ear and could reproduce melodies after hearing them just once or twice. In 1964, at the age of 18, Benny joined Hepstars, a Swedish rock band that would later become known as the Swedish Beatles. With his arrival, the group's sound matured almost overnight. Benny quickly became the band's musical brain and a teen idol. The big break came in 1966 when Benny met Björn Ulvaeus at a mutual friend's party. They quickly formed an instant musical partnership, starting to write music together, perfectly balancing each other. Benny, the emotional composer, Björn, the witty lyricist. By the early 1970s, Benny and Björn were not only co-writers but also life partners with two other musicians, Agnetha Fältskog, a leading Swedish solo artist, and Anni-Frid Frida Lyngstad, a jazz-turned-pop singer with a powerful alto voice. After failing to qualify for the Swedish Eurovision 1973 competition, they returned the following year with Waterloo, a glam pop song that won the 1974 Eurovision Song Contest. That moment catapulted them to international stardom. Soon after, they adopted the name ABBA, an acronym for the first letters of the four members' names. From then on, Benny was more than just a pop musician. He was a sound architect. He treated each song like a painting, layering instruments, arranging vocal harmonies with precision, and experimenting with synthesizers early on. In the studio, he was known for his patience and perfectionism, sometimes spending all day tweaking a single harmony until it struck the right chord. He was not interested in what was popular but in what was timeless. While Agnetha and Frida dazzled on stage and Björn penned clever, bittersweet lyrics, it was Benny who carved the emotional underbelly of ABBA's music. His signature style was a blend of brightness and depth, a Swedish melancholy hidden in the melody. Benny once remarked that if you lived in a country where it snowed for 5 to 6 months and the sun disappeared completely for about 2 months, it would be reflected in the artist's work, and this is certainly present in Swedish folk music and the Frida and Agnetha sound in some of ABBA's songs. Songs like Knowing Me, Knowing You, and Fernando have this bipolarity. Joy on the surface, sadness underneath. It was Benny's gift, allowing the listener to feel something deeper in ABBA's seemingly simple songs. After ABBA, Benny continued his illustrious career, collaborating with Björn Ulvaeus on the musical Chess, 1984, whose concept album sold 2 million copies worldwide, and then Mamma Mia, 1999, a musical built around 24 ABBA songs, which became a global box office hit. He has also been active with his own band, Benny Andersson's Orchester, BAO, since 2001. Before ABBA, Benny was in a relationship with Christina Grönvall, 1961 to 1966, with whom he had 2 children, Peter and Helene. After their separation, Christina retained custody of the children as Benny was at the height of his success with Hep Stars. Benny then had a relationship with Annie Frid Lyngstad for about 11 years, from 1969 to 1980. They married on 6 October 1978, but separated on 26 November 1980 and divorced in 1981. Their relationship has been described as fiery and symbiotic, a true musical love story. Frida has said that Benny understood her in a way that no one else did. In private, Benny's obsessive perfectionism, which made him such a genius in the studio, left no room for emotional availability at home. Frida, who was prone to emotional outbursts, sensed his growing absence. In 1981, Benny confessed his love for Mona Nurklit, a television producer. He married Mona Nurklit that same year and had a son, Ludwig. Notably, Benny Andersson was also an alcoholic for much of his adult life, but he has been sober since 2001. Ironically, as ABBA soared in public, it began to erode privately. The breakup was not sudden, but slow and subtle, like a house being damaged by time. The first crack was Björn and Agnetha's divorce in 1979, which the band managed to weather professionally. 2 years later, Benny and Frida followed a similar path. Their breakup was quiet and professional, but it left a deep scar on the band's dynamic. The end of ABBA was marked by a gradual disappearance. Their last official single, Under Attack, was released in December 1982. It failed to resonate with the same force as their earlier hits. For more than 40 years, the story of ABBA's demise has been defined by deafening silence. There was no farewell press conference, no final tour, just a fade into the mist of fan speculation and theories that stretched across decades. Interviews remained vague, and the word hiatus floated in the air. The absence of explanation left a void, leading to countless questions. Why did they stop when they were still successful? Was money tearing them apart, or was it creative conflict? Longtime fans, however, always suspected something deeper. ABBA's final albums, like The Visitors, released in 1981, reflected the ongoing emotional freeze. Songs like When All Is Said and Done and Slipping Through My Fingers were drenched in wordless pain. The sparkle had faded. Listeners sensed a heaviness in the lyrics and arrangements that betrayed something deeper than pop trends. The pain, the sense of disintegration beneath the polished surface, was not a projection of the listener. It was real. What changed everything was that in November 2024, Benny Andersson, famous for his quiet introspection and his avoidance of personal publicity, sat down for an interview. He didn't come with a rehearsed story. Instead, Benny did something rare. He told the truth, straight out. Benny's confession was much darker and more disturbing than anyone expected. He confirmed, "Well, we were exhausted." 2. The marriage was falling apart. 3. The music was starting to sound unnatural. 4. We needed to stop to protect ourselves. That simple, unsentimental statement struck a chord more than any scandal could. It confirmed what fans had long suspected. The breakup was not due to betrayal or artistic dispute, but emotional exhaustion. After years of performing, recording, and maintaining the illusion of joy, while their personal lives crumbled behind the scenes, the group had run out of steam. In April 2025, Benny offered more insight, describing the final 2 years, 1981 and 1982, as days of uninspired work. The once vibrant collaboration had turned into routine. He and Björn were still writing music, but without the same energy or purpose. It had begun to feel like a job, not a passion. Benny described the decision to stop as an inevitable breakup. He said, "We couldn't go on pretending, not to each other, not to ourselves." Benny's confession validated the sense of pain and disintegration that listeners felt in ABBA's final songs. For fans, it was the closure they never knew they needed. The mystery was no longer a mystery. The silence had a reason: exhaustion, emotional collapse, and the quiet need to move on. The biggest impact was the humanization of ABBA's perfect image. Benny said he did what he could. There was nothing left in us to give honestly. By speaking this truth, Benny was doing what ABBA never did: providing closure. The real nature of ABBA's demise was not a single event, but the psychological failure of a group of talented people to cope with the pressures of fame. The fear of confronting emotions, the human fragility that fame never prepared them for, was what destroyed the band from within. The core tragedy of Benny Andersson and ABBA lies in the contrast between public glory and inner emptiness. The deepest cause of the collapse was a combination of systemic pressure and faulty personal coping mechanisms. 1. Psychological exhaustion. Global fame required the band to maintain the illusion of joy, while their personal lives were falling apart. The pressure to constantly write, record, and perform turned the once vibrant collaboration into a routine, draining the passion. 2. Emotional escape. Benny admitted that music was his escape. He didn't know how to talk about his pain, so he wrote it instead. He once said, "I saved my best lines for songs, not for the people who needed to hear them from me." This was the culmination of his personal tragedy. His perfectionism in the studio, where he was a genius, turned into an emotional deficiency in his family and relationships. He was afraid to face the emotions swirling beneath every love song or breakup ballad. 3. The culture of concealment. The 4-decade silence was not just a personal choice, but also a consequence of celebrity culture, where the truth about human fragility had to be hidden to preserve the perfect image. The culmination of the tragedy was not the divorce, but the moment the art began to feel unnatural. When the creativity, the passion that had been their lifeblood, turned into uninspired workdays, that was when the soul of ABBA was lost. That The Visitors became a work of silent pain is proof that tragedy had taken over their own artistic stage. The revelation of emotional exhaustion is more tragic than any scandal. It challenges the belief that great success equates to personal happiness, and it reveals a heartbreaking truth about human nature. Even the most joyful of tune makers can be destroyed by inner fragility and fear. Benny's truth asserts that ABBA's songs are not glossy fantasies, but the messy, complicated, real fragments of 4 people trying to hold themselves together. No one is a complete victim in this tragedy. Benny, Bjorn, Agnetha, and Frida are all part of the tragic spiral created by their own careers. Personal responsibility. Benny takes responsibility for using music as an escape rather than confronting the people he loves. He failed to give emotional honesty in relationships, a responsibility of fame. The music industry system demands the constant maintenance of illusion, leaving artists no space to recover from personal traumas, like 2 divorces. Benny and ABBA ultimately chose to stop to protect themselves, an act that prioritized mental health over financial gain, as evidenced by their rejection of a $1 billion live tour offer. The most important lesson from Benny Andersson's tragedy is the value of honesty and human limitations. 1. Survival is more important than perfection. ABBA had to stop to survive. The lesson is that recognizing and accepting exhaustion is a necessary act to preserve the person inside. 2. Music as healing. Although Benny composed his pain, it was his eventual speaking out and speaking openly about exhaustion that brought closure. Truth must be found not only in art, but also in words. ABBA's tragedy reflects a widespread social issue, especially among artists: the pressure to maintain a perfect image while rotting inside. Benny's story is a warning about the price of fame when artists don't have the emotional tools to deal with their own fragility. The truth is revealed to help the public see artistic legacies not as the product of superhuman perfection, but as the result of a messy and honest struggle for survival. Benny Andersson, the silent man at the piano who survived the peak, the breakup, and the extraordinary rebirth of ABBA Voyage, for which he had complete production control, emphasizing emotional authenticity and technical perfection, finally lets us in. His career was defined not just by hits, Waterloo, Dancing Queen, but also by his courage in revealing that behind the glitter was exhaustion and a beautiful machine running at full throttle. By finally speaking these things out loud, Benny has brought closure to the band and millions of fans. He is telling us that it was never about perfection. It was always about survival. What questions does the hidden truth of ABBA's emotional exhaustion raise about the role of art in masking pain versus facing it head-on? If Benny and the members of ABBA had learned to face their emotions directly instead of just conveying them through songs, what other scenario might their musical legacy and the end of the band have played out?